Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Sala, and in today's video, I'm going to walk you through some basics in punctuation in English language, because I've noticed a lot of errors that people commit in writing English online, whether it is on Facebook, whether it is on LinkedIn or on Twitter, particularly people from Cameroon, Nigeria, and other countries. And in this video, I'm going to help you with the very basics of English punctuation. And then in subsequent videos, I'm going to get into more details on some of the most recurrent problems or errors identified. So without further ado, I would like to share my screen with you in order to facilitate today's lesson on punctuation. The first thing we need to know is that the most common punctuation marks in the English language are capital letters and full stops, also known as periods in American English, question marks, commas, colons, and semicolons, exclamation marks, and question marks. Now, when we speak, we use pauses and the pitch of the voice to make what we say clear. For example, I can say, where are you going to? Or where are you going? And then my tone at the end of the sentence, which is elevated, makes you understand that I'm asking a question. Okay? Punctuation plays a similar role in writing, making it clear or easier to read. Punctuation consists of both rules and conventions. And there are rules of punctuation that have to be followed. But there are also punctuation conventions that give writers greater choice. We will not go into the complexities of conventions and the other stuff, but we want to limit ourselves today in this video specifically on the very basic things about punctuation. And so I will start with capitalization, or the use of capital letters, also known as uppercase letters. I know that some of these might sound to you like very familiar material, but for some other people, this might just be the first time they are learning such stuff, or it might remind them in a healthy manner, in a positive and beneficial manner. That being said, we use capital letters and full stops. Full stop as in UK or British English or Australian and New Zealand English, we use capital letters and full stops to end, capital letters to start a sentence and full stops to end the sentence. And full stops in American English or in Canadian English sometimes are called periods. Okay, so we use capital letters to mark the beginning of a sentence, and we use full stops or periods to mark the end of a sentence. Remember I said period, we call the full stop a period in American English, and in British English we call it a full stop, spelled as two words. Examples, we went to Garoua last summer. We, capital letter, okay, because it starts this sentence, and then there is a full stop at the end after summer here. We visited the palace of the Lamido of Garoua. We, again, capital letter, because it starts, or uppercase letter, because it starts this sentence, the full stop here. B, we also use capital letters at the beginning of proper nouns, whether they are at the beginning or in the middle of a sentence. And proper nouns include personal names, meaning names of persons, including titles before names, nationalities and languages, days of the week and months of the year, public holidays, as well as geographical places. Some examples. Dr. David James is the consultant at Leeds City Hospital. Dr. David James, capital letter, capital D, capital J, Leeds, capital L, capital C for city, and capital H for hospital, because this is the name of a specific place, a hospital. They are planning a long holiday in New Zealand. Capital letter at the beginning here, then capital letter for New Zealand, which is the name of a country, a proper noun. Can she speak Japanese? Capital letter at the beginning of this question, Japanese name of a language, and a question mark because it is a question. The next meeting of the group will take place on Thursday. The capital T, beginning of a sentence, Thursday, name of a week, name of a day, name of a day, capital T, full stop at the end. What plans do you have for the Chinese New Year? What? Capital W, Chinese, capital C, New, capital N, capital Y. Or today is the Yam Festival in Lagos. Today is a Yam Festival, Yam, capital Y, Festival, capital F. Today, capital T. So this is capitalization. Now, more uses of full stops or periods. We use capital letters for titles of books, magazines, and newspapers, plays, and even music. So we can say Oliver is a musical based on the novel Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. Or we can talk about what's the name of be proud of who we are. Be Proud is the name of a musical piece by Winston Misty. Okay. Okay, that being said, we can also say the Guardian Post is a daily English language newspaper in Cameroon. The Guardian Post, capital G, capital P, English, capital E, Cameroon, capital C. They are performing Bole Botake's betrothal without libation. And you see here, Bole Botake, capital B for betrothal and libation, but without is not capitalized because it's a kind of linking word and it's not a very important word here. Okay, now in addition to closing sentences, we also use full stops or periods in initials for personal names. For example, EML Indele, Emmanuel, okay? So EML Indele, E, so this is an initial, it stands for a full name here, okay? Or we talk about Professor Bernard N. Fonlon, N standing for, this is an initial for Nsah, Bernard Nsah and Fonlon. We also use full stops. Full stops are also used after abbreviations, although this practice is becoming less common, especially in British English. So we will say ARR dot for arrival, or we'll say ETC dot for etc., etc. Even at the middle of a sentence, you will have etc., etc. with a dot, and that dot does not mean a full stop, okay? And then we will say doctor, DR for doctor as a doctor of philosophy, or we say prof, PROF, and a dot for professor. But now more and more, these uses are, as described here for doctor and professor, they are becoming less common in British English, but they continue to be very common in American English. Okay, that being said, we go now to the use of question marks. We may use an exclamation marks. We use question marks to make clear that what is said is a question. When we use a question mark, we do not use a full stop. You cannot use a full stop and a question mark at the end of the same sentence. Why do they make so many mistakes? This is a question. Why do they make so many mistakes? Why do they make so many mistakes? Question mark. So you are Harry's cousin? Yes, that's right. Because you see, so you are Harry's cousin? Yes, that's right, okay? Because this very sentence here, this question here, if we remove the full stop, the question mark, and we put a full stop, it will no longer be read this way. It will no longer be read as, so you are Harry's cousin. It would rather be read as, so you are Harry's cousin. So as a declaration, okay? It will now be a statement, a declaration. So that's why it is very important to take note about punctuation marks. Now, we also use exclamation marks to indicate an exclamative clause or expression in informal writing. What a surprise! That's a shame. Listen. Or sometimes even informal writing, and we use it especially to give orders or to show that a particular word or verb is used as an order. We can say, come here, then it will end with an exclamation mark. In that case, it is indicating order, command. But we also use exclamation marks to indicate emotions and other forms of exclamations or surprise. And when we want to emphasize something in informal, note that we're talking about informal, not formal writing, we sometimes use more than one exclamation mark. We could use two, we could use three. For example, oh no, with 3 exclamation marks. But you cannot do this in an official letter you are sending to the presidency somewhere, or to a prime ministerial office somewhere, or to a university missions office somewhere. You can do this between yourselves, between your family members and friends. Please don't ask me to phone her. Oh no, please don't ask me to phone her. So, oh no, you see, the emphatic no, I mean this no, please no, don't ask me to phone her, or don't ask me to phone her. Yeah, she would talk for hours. She would talk for hours. Another, so emphasis has been laid on hours, and it has been laid on no. So there is just no way you expect me to phone her, because she would talk for hours without end. Now, let us look at the use of commas. We use commas to separate a list of similar words or phrases. For example, it is important to write in clear, simple, accurate words. Clear, simple, accurate words. All these adjectives here, clear, simple, and accurate, they are qualifying the word words. And so we separate them with commas. They were more friendly, more talkative, more open than last time we met them. They were more friendly, more talkative, more open than last time we met them. So we've separated these phrases, more friendly, more talkative, and more open, with commas. We do not usually use a comma before an. Before an, okay, as you can see here, and I put it in color, at the end of a list of single words. So it depends, because I'm going to give you an exception to this rule just below. They traveled through Bulgaria, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, and Poland. Bulgaria, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, and Poland. But remember that you can also decide to use, and I'm actually so fond of using this, what I'm just going to talk about now, what we call the Oxford comma. I like it because sometimes when you don't put a comma preceding under at the end of a list, you can create confusion, especially when you want to lay emphasis on the individuality or of the items or the persons or the places or the things listed. That is why there is, in American English, there is often the use of a comma in list before the final and this is known as the Oxford comma. We took bread, cheese, and fruit with us. We took bread, cheese, and fruit with us. I'm a strong fan of this, the use of this comma. Yeah, I'm a strong fan of it. And I can only remove it maybe when I'm sending something to a journal or to a publishing house whose editorial policy and style manual deliberately and strongly goes against the use of this. But I prefer this because usually it removes ambiguity, particularly when you want to make sure that everything is stressed as being separate from the other, even though you've listed them together. Okay. That being said, so more uses of commas. We also use commas to separate words or phrases that mark where the voice would pause slightly. So I can tell you now, I can't tell you now. However, all will be revealed tomorrow at midnight. However, so you observe a brief pause. Why? Because there is this comma. This comma actually tells you have to observe a brief pause. When you use words like therefore, words like however, words like nevertheless, words like nonetheless at the beginning of a sentence. We had, in fact, lost all of our money. So you can also say we had lost all of our money. But now, why have we used these two commas here, this pair of commas, or known as comma splices? We have used these commas here because we have taken in fact, and instead of placing in fact at the beginning of this sentence, we have placed it in the middle. So we can actually move in fact and even throw it away, and this sentence will still remain. And in that case, if we are removing in fact to throw it away, we'll remove in fact together with this comma here and the second comma, and then the sentence will read as we had lost all of our money. But because you want to pause in the sentence and place some emphasis on the fact that this is a fact, then you say, we had in fact lost all of our money. And you can also take this in fact and put it here at the beginning and say, in fact, we had lost all of our money. And in that case, you will use only one comma. And then in the I in fact will become capital, and then you will bring down W to lowercase to small letter. Another example, James, our guide, will accompany you on the boat across to the island. James, our guide, will accompany you on the boat across to the island. So this sentence, our guide, is just a descriptive, adding more information to James so that you know who James is. But you can still remove James, our guide. You can also still remove our guide and these two commas, and you just say, James will accompany you on the boat across to the island. Okay, but in this case, there might be some automatic confusion, and the person will ask, but who is James? In that case, you say James is our guide. But now, because you don't want the person to ask who is James, you add this information here to clarify who James is, and you mark it off, you bound it off with a pair of commas. So we also use commas in separating clauses, where when main clauses are separated by an or but, we don't normally use a comma if the clauses have the same subject. So I will be coming back to this in my next video in more detail, or talking more about subject, verb, object as the basic structure of a sentence. Well, here, just note this. When main clauses are separated by an or but, we don't normally use a comma if the clauses have the same subject. However, and I'm not saying however, there is no arrow here, okay? However, we sometimes use commas if the clauses have different subjects. So let's go through these three examples. They were very friendly and invited us to their villa in Portugal. So it's the same subject. They were very friendly, and it is they who invited us to their villa. So invited and were are two verbs depending on one subject, and the subject is they, and that's why we have used and here without a comma. Second example, footballers these days earn more money, but they are fitter and play many more matches. Same subject. Footballers these days earn more money. Who earn more money? Footballers. And then, but they are fitter. Who are fitter? The footballers. So they here is a pronoun which replaces the noun footballers, and is still functioning as the subject of fitter and play, just as it could be of they earn more money these days. Okay, so same subject. But in this case, the last example here, it was an expensive hotel in the center of Stockholm, but we decided it was worth the money. It was an expensive hotel in the center of Stockholm, but we decided it was worth the money. You see that it was an expensive hotel. It is the subject, okay? It and hotel all play the role of a subject here. And the verb is was, and the place, center of Stockholm. But we decided, the second verb here, decided, has a subject, we. So decided does not depend on it as a subject. And for that reason, we have put a comma to separate these two clauses, okay? So, and we will be coming back to this in the next video. Now, more uses of commas. When a subordinate clause comes before the main clause, we commonly use a comma to separate the clauses. However, we do not always do this in short sentences. So listen again, when a subordinate clause, okay, comes before the main clause, a subordinate clause is like an additional clause, a complementary clause, and then the main clause is like the statement or the sentence which can stand alone and is complete. So for example, if you get lost in the city, please don't hesitate to text us or phone us. You see here, this is the main clause. Please don't hesitate to text us or phone us. This is the main clause, but it has a subordinate clause here, which marks the conditional. Because actually, if you get lost in the city, what? This is not a complete sentence, and that's why we call it a subordinate clause. It is an incomplete sentence. It only makes sense when we read it alongside with this one. So, and if you take it from here and you place it rather here, you will have something like, please don't hesitate to text or phone us if you get lost in the city. And at this moment, the comma will disappear. So we have this comma here because actually we have taken a subordinate clause and it is preceding, it is coming before the main clause, which is please don't hesitate to text us or phone us. But now in this short sentence, which says, if you get lost, just phone us, you can omit it. You can choose to omit it. It's optional here. Because actually what is the sentence actually saying here? The full sentence here will be something like phonos. The main clause or complete sentence will just be phonos, or just phone us, sorry, just phone us, just phone us. And then the subordinate clause is if you get lost. But because this sentence is very short, you can actually decide not to use a comma in it. If you were to use a comma in it, you will place the comma here after lost. G, when we use subordinate or non-finite comment clauses to give further details or more information, we commonly use commas to separate the clauses. You need to wear a darker jacket, if I may say so. You need to wear a darker jacket, if I may say so. Say what? Say, if I may suggest that you need to wear a darker jacket. So a comma separates it here. To be honest, I thought they were very rude. And then you can also even write, I thought they were very rude, comma, to be honest. Yeah. And then we continue with uses of the comma. The use of commas in relative clauses. We use commas to mark non-defining clauses. Such clauses normally add extra non-essential information about the noun or noun phrase, which means that they can be taken off and nothing big will change in the sentence. That's why, for example, this clause here, which arrives after just 5 minutes, is a non-defining relative clause, so you can actually take it off. The ambulance, which arrived after just 5 minutes, let me take it again. The ambulance, which arrived after just 5 minutes, took 3 people to the hospital immediately. So you can actually take out which arrived after just 5 minutes, and the sentence will be the ambulance took 3 people to the hospital. And that's why we call this one here a non-defining relative clause. Hong Kong, where the first ASEAN meeting was held, is a very different city today. So you can still say Hong Kong is a very different city today. Hong Kong is a very different city now or today. And this sentence will not be very important. You just add some information to Hong Kong. And this information is actually information that can be taken off. And the same is true for non-finite clauses. The storm, lasting as it did for several days, caused serious damage to villages near the coast. The storm, lasting as it did for several days, caused serious damage to villages near the coast. The non-finite clause here is lasting as it did for several days, and you can actually eliminate this with the commas, with the 2 commas, the comma splices. And you see, have a very good and complete sentence which reads, the storm caused serious damage to villages near the coast. And this is the last slide about uses of commas. We can also use commas, or the use of commas and speech forms. We commonly separate tags. In tag questions, we separate the tags and yes, no responses with commas. For example, they are going to the party, aren't they? So they are going to the party. This is the statement, and here you have added this tag to confirm the information. They are going to the party, aren't they? You've separated it with a comma. No, thank you. No, thank you. Yes, no responses. No. Would you want to take a cup of coffee, or would you like to take a cup of sha? Would you like to take a cup of Ricard or a cup of Matango? No, thank you. Yes, thank you. Okay, I've already eaten too much. No, thank you. I've already eaten too much. No, thank you. I've already drunk enough. Okay, we also usually separate vocatives, discourse markers, and interjections with commas. Open the door for them. Kylie, can you? Open the door for them. Kylie, can you? Open the door for them. Ngono, can you? Thanks. Vocative. Well, what do you think we should do about it? Discourse marker. Well, what do you think we should do about it? Discourse marker. Well, wow, that sounds really exciting. Wow, that sounds really exciting. Interjection. Although we have not used an exclamation sign here, okay? Now, we use commas to show that direct speech is following or has just occurred. He said in his opening speech, comma, and then you quote him what he said, now is the time to plan for the future, and I quote unquote. Or he said in his opening speech, and then you introduce it with a colon. Now is the time to plan for the future. When the direct speech is first or comes first, we use a comma before the closing of the quotation marks. For example, we don't want to go on holiday to the same place every year, he said impatiently. So the direct speech is here, and then we separate this with a comma inside the quotation mark, and then we end it by indicating who said it. Now the use of colons and semicolons. But we start first with colons. We use colons to introduce lists, and I'll come back to this in the next video. There are three main reasons for the success of the government: economic, social, and political. Economic, social, and political what? Reasons. These are the three reasons. So you have introduced this list of three reasons with a colon. And if you wanted to use an Oxford comma, you will put a comma after social before and here. Then we also use colons to indicate a subtitle or to indicate a subdivision of a topic. Life in Province, a personal view. This is the main title, Life in Province, and then the subtitle is a personal view. We often use colons to introduce direct speech. Then he said, as we use above, then he said, I really cannot help you in any way. Then he said, quote unquote, I really cannot help you in any way. We commonly use a colon between sentences when the second sentence explains or justifies the first sentence or adds something to the first sentence. Try to keep your flat clean and tidy, or try to keep your room clean and tidy, or try to keep your apartment clean and tidy. It will sell more easily. So this is a justification or an explanation for why you need to keep your flat clean and dirty. It will sell more easily in the real estate market. And now the use of semicolons, and I'm going to come back to this next time. We use semicolons instead of full stops to separate two main clauses. In such cases, the clauses are related in meaning, but are separated grammatically. Spanish is spoken throughout South America. In Brazil, the main language is Portuguese. You see, Spanish is spoken throughout South America. In Brazil, the main language is Portuguese, but this is an exception. So Brazil is an exception to this rule. So this sentence is related to this one because we want to clarify that although Spanish is spoken throughout South America, there is an exception that stands out, and that is Brazil, where the main language is Portuguese. So these sentences are actually separated grammatically because you can still say in Brazil, the main language is Portuguese, but they are actually related in meaning because you want to talk about the linguistic map of South America. We can also use semicolons to separate items in a list. If, remember, there is a condition here, if some single items have commas in them. So we can also use semicolons to separate items in a list, but on the condition, if and only if some single items have commas. So let's take this example here. The central administration at MINREX, MINREX here stands for the Ministry of External Relations in Cameroon. The central administration at the Ministry of External Relations includes the Secretariat General, semicolon, the Department of African Affairs, semicolon, the Department of European Affairs, semicolon, the Department of Cameroonians abroad, foreigners in Cameroon, refugees, and migration issues. You see, this department is one of the items we are counting or we are listing here, but it has at least 2 commas in it. And so if you were to separate the rest of this list using commas, you will set confusion because of these 2 commas, which actually belong to one of the items. And so it makes sense here to use semicolons to separate the item so that the item with commas in it will not set any confusion. So the rest of the other departments are the Department of Communication, Documentation, and Diplomatic Archives. And you see again that this item has a comma in it. And that again justifies why we had to use semicolons to separate the items in this list. Then the other departments are the Department of Protocol, Ceremonies, and Consular Affairs. Again, a comma here. and the Department of General Affairs, etc., etc. Actually, there's so many departments within the central administration here, but I just wanted to have a mix of some that are like straightforward without a comma in them, and those that have commas in them, and to show you why we need to use semicolons to separate them, because some single items or some items considered to be single actually have commas in them. Finally, this is just a remark I want to make, is that more and more semicolons are not very commonly used in contemporary English, but as I've explained in these two situations above, they continue to be used. But when you have another possibility or alternative of not using them, you can always look for ways of not using them. Because, for example, you could still write these two sentences without using this semicolon, and instead just writing them as two independent sentences, although they are related by meaning, okay? But in a situation like this one, it's very difficult. There is almost just, in fact, there is no other way to introduce these items in this list without using semicolons, because some of the single items actually have commas in between them. So we have come to the end of this video on some basics of punctuation. Of course, there's some punctuation marks that I've not talked about, but my point here was to talk about the most commonly used ones. And I will be coming back with a video next week where I will then focus on the very many common errors of punctuation that I find online when people interact, when people share on social media and other platforms, or even when I read like scientific papers, okay? So congratulations and thank you for having watched to the end of this video. And please, if you were watching for the very first time, subscribe to my channel and click on the notification button, okay? So that you can be notified whenever I bring up a new video. And please watch out for the next video, because in the next video I will deal with specific examples I've culled from different places, and that's where we are going to get into like more complicated stuff, or that's where much more learning is going to start happening in terms of punctuation. And also feel free in the comment section of this video to drop any questions and worries or preoccupations that you have about punctuation, which I can address in that video or any other subsequent video on punctuation. Thank you. See you next time. Nsah.